There we go.
Hello, and welcome to the latest interview in the Author Level Up interview series, where I interview successful authors to see how they leveled up your careers to help you do the same. I'm Michael Aran, host of Author Level Up, and I'm joined tonight by Nathan Meunier. How are you, Nathan?
I'm doing good, man. How's it going?
Great, great. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's a blast. I love doing these things. Like, I love the shop talk stuff where, I nerd out about the whole self-publishing, book writing, word slinging world. So always fun
Yeah,
to talk with fellow writers.
yeah, likewise. And it's funny because I found you. Oh gosh, I always forget. I'm bad with timelines, but I found you about 6 to 8 months ago, and I think it was right after Right Short Kindle book came out. And at that point, the book was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. And I remember you were doing some courses, and I took some of your courses and thought, wow, this is awesome. And like here's another writer that is kind of doing the similar thing that I am, and you're much further along the road than I am, and you're doing awesome things. And it's like, wow, I got to get to know you. And we've been chatting, and lo and behold, here we are live on YouTube.
Awesome.
It's good
Thanks.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess for the people who aren't familiar with you, why don't you introduce yourself to the show and kind of how you got started writing?
Sure. Yeah, I've been writing professionally for about, I don't know, 12 years or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. I started off as a news reporter out of college, and I got a gig doing some freelance work on the side. On top of that, writing about video games and technology for some publications. And then over the years, I kind of worked my way up into bigger publications like Nintendo Power and all the places as a kid like I dreamed of being into, because I'm a super nerd when it comes to like video games and stuff. So I did a lot of that for quite a long time, and that kind of led me down the path to writing my first book, which ended up being a how-to guide that teaches other writers how to break into the games industry as a freelancer. And I've always wanted to be an author, and I didn't really like know how to do it. And I initially, back when I first started writing, I was thinking more like traditional publishing. Although always been like a really DIY, like very much like learn how to do something and just do it kind of guy. So I did some of the traditional publishing route stuff where you come up with a traditional pitch and a long document, and you try to get on the radar of publishers. And that didn't really work out with the first couple of book ideas I had. And I kind of eventually, this is back before like self-publishing really was a thing on Kindle and whatnot. Like it was a lot different of a world back then. So I kind of just parked that on the shelf for a while and focused on freelancing in the games industry and working my way up, sort of doing that world. And but I always wanted to write a book. So I finally figured out that the one thing I wanted to write about, like I have a hard time just saying, oh, I'm just gonna write a book about whatever. Like I want to write about things that interest me personally, and it's generally stuff that helps other people that I also have accumulated knowledge on. So I love to learn constantly, and then I'll take that and apply it into stuff that can help other people. So that's how my first book kind of came about. And I actually did like a Kickstarter campaign and a whole bunch of weird things to see if it was even worth doing like a book, if people would be interested in it. And that's kind of what pushed me sort of finally into the author self-publishing world, where I decided to just do it myself, crowdfund it to see if I can get enough stuff to do things like cover art and editing and whatnot, and just get that first book out there and see how it would go. And it was quite the adventure, and it worked out, but it was just like, it showed me that, okay, I can do this. And then from there, it just kind of spiraled out of control, where I decided that, doing one big giant book a year every 2 years just kind of didn't quite jive with me. So I like to do things faster. I like to learn how to kind of, be more productive and be able to experiment more and not have as much stress trying to get like one thing out the door. So I kind of decided to do some shorter book projects after that. And that kind of led me on the path of discovering like, oh, on Kindle, if you're selling a book for a couple bucks, you don't have to write 150,000 words, especially if you're a nonfiction author, where, if you're writing nonfiction, it's really all about just like delivering the information, like delivering that value and being very targeted in how you're doing it. So it's cool to be able to write a very focused book and have it be, 15,000 words, 25,000 words. And so sort of coming to that realization is like, I can write books shorter, faster, and just be able to really narrow down on what I'm writing about, was kind of this revelatory moment where I'm just like, wow, I can do this. Like, this is so much easier than spending 2 years agonizing over whether I'm going to get a book done or not. And I kind of put out a couple books after that first one that was shorter, and they did okay, but they weren't it wasn't quite on point with the first book. And I decided to shift gears and write a book about writing short books, which was something I've been thinking a lot of, and I was taking notes throughout this entire process. That's how I came to like write short Kindle books, which was kind of my first really good selling book beyond that initial book. And
Yeah.
put that out like last year, and early last year, and it's sort of just been a while. It just kind of exploded, and I wasn't expecting it to. And that sort of changed my entire realm. And I've put out, I think, 4 or 5 books since then. And it's been that was sort of a long-winded rant, but like, yeah, that's how I've kind of get to the point where I'm now. And from that is just propelled me further and further down the rabbit hole of creating courses and entrepreneurship and doing a lot of the things that you see a lot of the successful self-publishers doing these days. Like a lot of the awesome people that are out there doing podcasts and courses and writing more books, obviously, but like there's so many different cool things you can do to apply all these different skills. And yeah, I didn't even know, that's not quite relevant, but I'm just like randomly blabbering about stuff as I tend to do on the internet. But
no, I think it is relevant because you know, one of the things I talk about a lot when I'm talking to other authors about you know, how they start their careers, and that's why I asked you, because this particular thing interests me, because it's just so fascinating to me to see how people start, because the author field is so diverse that, you know, in some ways it's like the most diverse field there is, because there's people who are authors from all walks of life, right?
Yeah,
and your freelance background, I'm sure, helps you tremendously with you know, the writing and the deadlines and all of that. So I did want to transition into write short Kindle books, because you brought it up, and that was my first question that I wanted to ask you.
Perfect.
And you talked a little bit about what inspired you to write Kindle books, but you know, I think fiction authors probably need to cover their ears for a moment, because this probably pertains to nonfiction authors. But I love write short Kindle books, and in the book, it's basically a manifesto for writing short books, right? But can you talk about can you make the case for that? Like, why should authors these days consider writing shorter books?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of different reasons that I've sort of kind of uncovered as I was starting that process of like kind of narrowing down the length and scope. For starters, the Kindle store there's so many books on the marketplace. So, and there's lots of different categories. So there are definitely niches that, you know, people go to look for very specific kinds of books on something. So if I'm looking for a book on a topic, I don't want a book that's this massive, you know, 100,000 word tome that covers, you know, a fraction of one chapter on the subject I'm looking for. Like, I want an entire book that's, even if it's like 15,000 words, I want a book that specifically talks about that one specific thing I want to learn about. And that's kind of been how the Kindle store has evolved and allowed this to kind of happen over the past 5 or 6 years. I mean, since it's gaining more momentum, there's so much more variety and opportunities to kind of cut out all the fluff that you might traditionally think needs to go into a book, and just take that space and fill it with exactly like what people want, like the on-point content, the very narrowly, you know, you don't have to pad your word count. You just like really drill down deep on a subject and deliver value. And that's, you know, the Kindle books are perfect for that, because they're only a couple bucks. People have gotten used to paying between 99 cents and $2.99 for a Kindle book. And, you know, it's shifted people's expectations too. So people have shorter attention spans. And I mean, I certainly do. Like when I read a book, if it's more than like 30, 40,000 words, if it's a nonfiction book, I tend to, unless it's a really good book, I tend to kind of just like lose steam halfway through, because I'm super busy, and usually I buy books because I want to learn some new skill or pick up something that I didn't know. So if half of the book is just kind of waffling back and forth about things and it's not on point, I kind of lose interest. So short Kindle books really gives you an opportunity to kind of narrow your focus and complete projects in a shorter time frame. And you know, it takes less time to research a book that, you know, if you're doing something that's within the 20,000 word range or shorter, and you're going to be charging a couple bucks for it. So if you deliver that value and, you know, people enjoy it, it doesn't really matter the length if they're getting something out of it. So, you know, that there's a lot of different reasons to do shorter books, but I think it's certainly helped a lot of authors, and myself particularly, get over that hump of like writing a book where it feels like it has to be this like massive thing where it can take an entire year of planning and then a year of like writing and then editing and whatnot. I mean, you can write a book and get it edited and have it put together really nicely in a month. Mm-hmm. Most people probably could take a little bit longer than that, but like you could do, instead of doing one book every 2 years, you could do like 5 or 6 books a year. You could do 10 books a year. It's really just a matter of what is within the realm of what you're able to do. But there's so much potential to like turbocharge your writing world and like what you're able to accomplish in a given time frame. So if you have more books out in the marketplace, you're definitely going to have more opportunities to cross promote. You're going to be more visible. And just the nature of the Kindle store where, you put a book out and after a month it goes off the sort of hot new release. If you manage to sell copies right up front, it gets going, you get that momentum, but then it's sort of after 30 days, you kind of drop off that, the new releases tab. So it's not considered as a new book and it's not promoted as heavily through Amazon, even if you are continuing to maintain sales. So how do you keep up that momentum? Well, put out another book. And especially if you're writing books that are related, it really provides an opportunity to, instead of writing one massive book that takes so long and it's just like, you're writing one book and then you sell it and say it's 100,000 words. And then after that month, it drops off the radar. Well, maybe you sold a lot of copies and it becomes a really good book, but then that's done. What's your next book going to be? Instead, you could take a book that's that scope and really break it down into several chunks. So if you have sections of the book that each have numerous chapters, you could take those and make an individual short book that's really focused, that has more room to kind of drill deep into those subjects and break it up across several books, and then do that as a series. So every 3 months, you're putting out a new book that relates and ties back into the previous book, and then plugs the next upcoming book. And you can cross-link through them, and it creates this massive sort of web of related work that you can use to promote yourself and your author platform. And it's a great way. If someone loves one of your books, there's a good chance they're going to want to buy the next book and the next book after that. And especially if you're providing that value in a way that, is giving them what they need, which is why it's also important to kind of listen to your audience and see what they want from you, what information is not already out there, or what can they get the most out of. So yeah, there's so many reasons to do it. Those are probably a couple I rattled off, but it's worth considering doing something short, especially if you're someone who struggles with the idea of writing a book, where you've always wanted to write a book, but it's just a matter of finding the time to do it, because we're all super busy. We're all, I personally have tons of different things going on. So even this year, I'm trying to get some new books out the door. I'm just getting caught up in doing some other projects, and then my freelancing work picked up. So it's trying to find that time. And even with shorter books, I'm still okay, I need to carve out that block. But it really takes what might seem like a mountain at first and just chops it down to a more manageable kind of obstacle to get through. And I find that you can really get a lot more done. You can get more books out, and you can, if you're a first-time author, it removes some of the paralyzing fear that can come from going, I'm going to create a book, but it's just so much, so much involved and so big, I'm never going to finish it. And I think that's part of the reason why so many authors will start a book and they just kind of lose steam and give up, because that whole idea of trying to finish and release something can be daunting. Right. So yeah.
No, I love that, and there's so much there to dig into. I can imagine someone watching this who hasn't written nonfiction, for example, or who is interested in it, maybe has a few books out, but they hear you speaking and say, oh my gosh, how am I going to release 12 books this year, or 10 books this year? Ideas, I think, is a big obstacle for nonfiction writers. And what would you recommend as a way to come up with ideas, how to brainstorm, outline, and what's your process?
Sure. I think it all starts on a couple different key levels. And you obviously want to pick topics that align with things that you're passionate about. So if you're not really interested in fruit smoothies or yoga, those might be hot topics on, Kindle that are selling well, but don't write a book if you're not into what you're writing about. So that's step number one. You gotta, and I thought about it, there's lots of cool niches out there that are really selling well, but I'm not really into it. So I'm going to focus on the stuff that I'm interested in, that it makes it easier to write. And it's better to kind of, if you're building a brand as someone who writes about a specific topic or a niche, that you don't jump around too far off the beaten path, even though it's totally okay to kind of branch out and experiment. So deciding on a topic and subject area that has some room to grow, it's got to have enough, content there to explore that you can potentially put a couple books into it. But also something that aligns with something that you feel really strongly about. I'm very passionate about learning how to do stuff, and I'm passionate about talking shop on about writing and helping other writers kind of get through the common challenges that I face every day or have faced and overcome. So that's one area that I've identified as something that really interests me, and I'm able to kind of come up with book ideas on a steady basis. I have a file with maybe 2 or 3 dozen potential book ideas, and awesome. I often will just sit on them and then never write them, or I'll cross them off, or I'll just kind of keep them and then retool them later on when it pops up as a good idea to tackle. Sometimes a book is not always timely when you first think about it, like the topic might be not super popular, but then it blows up in a couple months. Like when I first write short Kindle books, it was like 6 or 7 months before I even launched it. So I just wrote it and I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about this. Let me just sit on it. And I just sat on it, and I could have put it out, but I just wanted to let it have some time to percolate and think about kind of, what was the content of the book? How can I improve on it? Was it ready to launch? And put some thought into how that would go. And then I finally like pulled it out and then polished it up a bunch and felt really good about like after you sit on something for a while, you can identify easier like what needs to be fixed with it. So that was helpful in the drafting. But then I just put it out and I was just like, wow, I was not expecting it to do what it did. And sort of, that kind of helped me identify like, oh, here's a niche that I can actually continue to write in, because it aligns with my passions and it's something that people want. So that's part of it too. And the other important part is finding a niche that people are actually buying other books in, there's an interest there. I mean, you can write about guinea pig raising or, potato gardening, but if there's no people that want to buy books about those subjects, it's going to be a hard sell. So that can be a challenge too, because sometimes the stuff that you want to write about doesn't always align with what people are buying on the Kindle marketplace. So it is helpful to kind of find that audience first and kind of take some time to research and test and see, like, are these folks who will buy this book, are they interested in this topic? Is there people that are already out there that I can tap into, whether it's Facebook groups or organizations or established niches that, I have something unique to say in that and people would be interested in that. So those are kind of important steps for sort of getting ideas and figuring out where to go from there. And oftentimes I love mind mapping too. Like that's another, building a mind map is something that I do religiously. Like I get up an idea and I just try to think of how many different ways can I spin it out into different angles and then sort of just pick what works the best. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. And I think you definitely make the case for writing fast. And I think you and I can both agree, we're both pretty fast writers, that speed times volume equals awesomeness, right? So for that author who understands that, right, where they can come up with the ideas, they follow your advice, they understand, how to generate their ideas and brainstorm, they're probably thinking, okay, how am I going to release 10 books this year? Because it's going to cost a lot of money. Right? Because it's not cheap to produce a novel.
Sure.
You've got some tips. Money is a big factor, but what are some shortcuts and techniques and tips and tricks you've picked up to help people save money along the path?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting subject because it really is worth spending some money to make some money when it comes to authorship.
I agree.
But at the same time, I've kind of built a system where I don't actually have to pay anything for the books because of just the way I take the time to learn how to do things myself, and not everybody has the patience or time to do that. But if you do and you like to learn things, then you can basically cut out a huge chunk of what your expenses would be to produce a book. So I'm not an amazing cover designer, but I've done all of my own cover designs, and I have some graphic design.
Well, I didn't know that. I love your covers. I think they're awesome, actually.
I mean, they're not all great, but then oftentimes they'll go through iterative processes where like I'll put a cover out and go, let me change the title here. Let me do something else. But usually I'll get some feedback initially and then I'll put a cover together and go. But I love to do visual design stuff. I used to make posters when I was in like punk rock bands in college, and I've did zines, and I've worked doing graphic design for newspaper stuff. So that background has definitely helped in terms of me learning how to lay out things. And I also spent a lot of time studying the Kindle store to see what books are out there, what books appeal to me visually, and like what's selling in the top, what the designs look like, and kind of work from that. But so anyway, that's just one example. Like covers can cost you hundreds of dollars or more depending on kind of who you hire. You could certainly get like, a cheapy Fiverr cover, but like you kind of oftentimes get what you pay for, and a cover will make or break your book often. So if it's not a good cover, it doesn't matter how great your book is, people will look at it and go, and then click somewhere else where there's a nicer looking cover. So that's very true. But I learned how to do some cover design, and I've been practicing and kind of working to improve my designs as I put out new books. I learned HTML enough that I've done some basic web design, and oftentimes Kindle formatting you can do completely in HTML. Like there's different ways to do formatting for your books. But I figured it out. I spent 6 or 7 months just agonizing over like, how do I get all these things right, and figuring out the best formula to get the Kindle formatting I wanted. And then I kind of found it and built a template, and then I actually sell that template, but I use it for all my own books, and it makes it's all set up and I just have to dump my content in and then fiddle with a few things and it's ready to go. So I do all of my own book cover designs. I do all of my own formatting for Kindle. Editing is one of the other big things. And I do self-edit, but I don't self-edit entirely. Like I certainly get other people to look at the books. So oftentimes I'll use people that are in sort of like my inner circle of beta readers, mostly to get feedback on books, but also they're really great for kind of catching typos and things I don't miss. Because I'm a freelance writer and I write daily on tight deadlines all the time, I've gotten really good about sort of writing in a way that's almost first draft polished, like ready to submit. Like I kind of polish as I go, which is not really the best way to write creatively. It sort of like slows you down. But at the same time, I tend to end up with a draft that's not completely sloppy mess. Like it's a little bit more put together. So then what I'll do is I'll just kind of spend my own time taking passes over it, and then I will get other people to read it. So I did hire an editor for my first book who was a colleague. But after that, it got expensive. And I decided, let me see if I can work with other people that I trust in the industry and do stuff like, I'll help them edit their books. Like we'll do some sort of like back and forth sharing and collaboration with other writers. People who are interested in reading the book, and I'll give them a free copy. And then they'll say, oh, I found this, this, and this. And it's like, wow, thanks a bunch. I appreciate your feedback. And when you get enough eyeballs on your book, it can kind of almost make up for having an editor. Granted, I'm doing nonfiction books, so I know a lot about what I'm writing typically, and I have spend a lot of time structuring it. So if I was writing fiction, it would probably be a little bit different story. I'd probably spend more to hire an editor, do have someone do the whole like story, work editing and stuff. But it's a little bit easier when you're doing
I would echo that. Yeah, I definitely think with fiction, I mean, you have to have at least one editor. But I think with nonfiction, at least for me, it feels like blogging. In a way. And kind of like you, where I'm writing my nonfiction books, the first drafts usually are pretty close to what it's going to be. And I think it's important too with nonfiction, with the speed and the volume, because nonfiction, unlike fiction, it kind of does have a shelf life. And so
for sure,
you really can miss a window, if you take too much time to produce something. That's not to say that, your book can't have a million lives, but, for something like potato gardening, it may not be fashionable for very long, if that is even if that's even a niche right now. I don't think it is, but just for the nonfiction people out there, I think that you made some great points on streamlining your process, because if you're going to have that speed and volume, you definitely have to have a very nimble system, right, to produce your books. But I wanted to transition to another thing that you're doing, because you've mastered the process of ebooks. Right. But there's another thing you're doing that, no, I think you have. I mean, with your success, it's testament to the fact that, you know what you're doing, and you've gotten it right. But there's something else you're doing that I think you're really blazing the trails that I wanted to talk about, that I think will be beneficial to the people on the Author Level Up channel. And that's courses. Oh, yeah. You have done quite a few courses, and can you tell people about those and why you decided to do courses?
Yeah. I mean, in particular, being a nonfiction author, it's interesting. It's I've been thinking a lot about this lately. Video has gotten really huge in the past couple years. It's a lot easier to put together an online course and sell it in those marketplaces that allow you to do that. But you can also take information from your books and use them, and like it's almost like you're not recycling the same information, but you can build on it and create a more premium product. Because some people don't want to sit through and read a Kindle book for several hours. Some people respond better to video or audio. Like I do a podcast on freelancing because like I like to talk shop, and that's one way to reach people that I can provide value to them. That there's a specific audience, the people that love podcasts. I'm a huge podcasting nerd. I listen to all the podcasts I can get my hands on. So that's one example of ways you can kind of branch out and reach a different audience. And with online courses, on one hand, you can charge more for them because they're a more premium product, and they're a multimedia product. So it's like a different level than just a 99-cent ebook. So from that standpoint, you can take what you're working on and create related courses that offer more value. And the courses are cool because they're kind of an organic growing thing. I've got courses up on Udemy right now. There are several other platforms, and I have other things I'm experimenting with. But when someone buys one of my courses, granted, they're getting the video, and you can take that at your own pace, and you're learning all the stuff I've created in audio and video lessons and handouts. but they also have access to a direct feed to me. So like people can message me, they can post in the discussions and network with other students. And it creates almost like a little sub community where everyone's learning together and you can ask questions. And I try to add more videos as I go and expand and grow the courses. So if students say, I want to learn more about this, or you didn't cover this as much as I would like to hear about it, I'll go, okay, cool. Let me put together a lesson and I'll add videos to it. So there's definitely a good value in like expanding beyond books into other formats and platforms where you don't necessarily have to create all new content, but you can create complementary content. Especially if you're a nonfiction author and you're doing, a series of books. If you're writing in a particular niche, it just makes sense to offer a more premium product on top of that, where you can make more income. But also, it's fun to create courses. I found I almost find that I can create courses faster than I can create ebooks, because when you're writing a script for a course, it's a lot more conversational, and you can get away with not having it be 100% polished because you're talking your script out. And I'm not really great at being, this is one of the rare times where I'm actually like popping up on camera video. But for a long time, I was terrified of being on camera. So my courses, the first few I've done, were really just a matter of like, doing spoken audio like this and recording it and then editing the audio and then putting PowerPoint slides over it. And that works fine. So it's one of those examples of like, if you write a book and where do you go from there? And I think for me, it's been a way to kind of overcome some of my fears. Like podcasting has been my, outlet for overcoming my inability to speak publicly. And in the 2 years I've been podcasting, I've grown like 500% more comfortable with talking to a microphone, talking to people online, doing those kind of things where you're interacting with people in a very organic, sort of non-scripted way. And that's benefited me elsewhere in terms of like speaking with people and the way I've interacted with people and then creating courses. So it's interesting to see like how picking up other complementary schools, like other things you can do like online courses or podcasting, can really play into building your platform and reaching new people, but also, giving you something to offer beyond books, and even like as an upsell within your book. So if you don't, you can do a short book and charge a couple bucks for it. No problem. There are people that are going to buy that, but there's also people that want more. And if you can kind of level up your offerings and provide additional content that's high value in video form, in the form of an online course, you can provide discounts in your books so that people could say, oh, this book is great, but I would like more. Oh, well, I'll get a huge discount if I click on this and get the online course version, which has tons more content. Like, it's an interesting strategy that works pretty well. And I've been seeing a lot of people use it. And I've been trying to experiment more with it in my own world in terms of like creating courses and then creating complementary books that are related and tying them all together in ways that sort of expands what I'm doing on a bigger level. And that's been one of my big experiments that I'm kind of pushing into this year more of, but it's a lot of fun, and you can apply a lot of the same concepts of creating short ebooks to creating short courses. In some cases, if you can get over the production fears of like, I'm not comfortable on camera, like, you can do it in probably less time. I think both my courses I created in about 2 weeks each or less. And that was a couple hours a day. And it was very much like writing a book. It felt exactly the same as the way I did it. So
you're exactly right. I mean, I was terrified of courses, 3 years ago. In fact, people can still go on my YouTube channel from my personal YouTube, Michael Laron, and look at a couple of the videos I did that I'm on there. It's just terrible, right? And look at Author Level Up now. I mean, you're right. It definitely, video, it's that third dimension. Like it helps you connect with people in a way that you just can't do via text. And even via audio, for example. And it really, as a nonfiction author, I think it's essential too, because the person that makes the connection with their audience, I mean, you win. Hands down.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's just no, I mean, right now in this era, everyone's terrified of doing video. So if you do it just by virtue of doing it, as long as you put a little bit of ounce, effort into it, then you're going to be fine. And so that's my soapbox for video.
It's fun once you get comfortable. And I'm never like 100% comfortable with any of the things I'm doing. I'm just sort of like, just going to do it. And I think that's the best way to overcome your fears, is to just dive in and start doing it. And you naturally will get better the more you do it. Like writing books, I was terrified of like, if I write a book, someone's going to laugh at me because it's horrible. It's like,
Yeah.
that was my mindset when I first started writing. And here I am, like almost 9 books. I've written several. I'm still finishing, but 8 books and several courses. And I also do game development, some other projects. Like I've just put all this stuff out, and I learned how to do it. And you sort of like fail forward. Like not everything you do is going to be 100% awesome every single time.
Exactly.
Like my second and third book didn't sell very well at all. But then you'll get books that do sell well, and if you just keep at it, you'll get more comfortable and get better and level up your skills. And the same applies to podcasting or courses or whatnot.
Right.
And as like Michael said, there are really great ways to connect with your audience in a way that you cannot just do with text. So they're very great as in terms of the complementary tool, because you're building your brand as an author. You're building your platform, and the more you can connect with people in a personal way, so they get to know who you are, and it's going to make it so much easier to interact with them and kind of continue to grow your audience. So super powerful,
Yeah.
which is why we're doing this.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. And to make a, put my Nostradamus hat on, I think in 5 years, right, there's not ebooks. We haven't seen what ebooks can really do. And courses still are in their infancy, even though people are kind of beating us to death with courses on Facebook and, podcasts and so on and so forth. But we still haven't really seen what they can do. And I think in the next 5 years, for nonfiction authors, there's not going to be much of a difference between an ebook and a course. The ebook is going to be the course, which is what I think. When you marry the text, when you marry the audio, the podcast, you marry the video together, you have one cohesive package. And nonfiction authors may not need to write books anymore. Because everything could go multimedia. So I think doing video now, getting in on it now, even though it seems like it's too late, because all the YouTube superstars got their start back in 2006, I still think video it's long term, it's going to be a winner.
There's never really a bad time to start something new. I mean, even if it takes a while to build momentum, like it's just another way to reach the people that you want to reach, and it's definitely powerful stuff. But also the other thing that's interesting too is when you're building courses, not everybody learns in the same way, which is kind of the magic thing when it comes to books and podcasts I can't talk today, and courses and whatnot. Some people prefer to read, some people prefer to listen. And, if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm usually cooking dinner or doing dishes or doing something that normally I might not be that super stoked to do, but because I'm listening to a podcast, I'm like right there and like, I'm doing it. This is awesome. I'm like, I actually look forward to sometimes like, I'm going to cook dinner tonight because I can listen to podcast episode X, Y, or Z. So you can't always learn the same way. Some people don't have time to learn by reading or whatnot. And they prefer to, look at their phone and watch a video or listen to a podcast. Or some people don't care for any of them. They just want to read. And that's totally cool too. So there's lots of avenues to explore.
Yeah. I actually am doing a video on this on Author Level Up here in a couple of weeks. So spoiler alert. But there really are 3 types of learners. There are the visual learners who prefer ebooks. That might be all they care about. And there's the audio learners, who they learn via podcasting. That's their preferred method of seeing things. And then there's the kinesthetic learners, which are the people who learn by doing, which, if they just jump into something, I don't want to listen to a podcast, I don't want to watch a video, I don't want to read a book, I just want to sign up for this service and I just want to format my ebook and I'll learn as I go.
Yeah.
Right. And I think as a nonfiction author, especially if you're doing courses or if you're going to consider courses, I think it's important to think about all those three types of learners in your curriculum, because you're going to have people who might be one, they might be a mix of all 3. And so if you can tailor your content to suit those different learning styles, which means mastering how to write, mastering how to work a microphone if you're podcasting, or mastering being on camera. I think that's going to be super duper. If I guess use that word in a sense, and it's crazy. Yeah, that's one of my things is I use these quirky words every once in a while. But well, we're coming up on time, Nathan, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, as you know, you're the second interviewee in my interview series, and the last interview I had Monica Leonel on. Awesome. For those of you who haven't seen that, go watch it because it was a great interview. But at the end of our interview, I asked her a question that I want to ask all of my interviewees as I do this, just because I think it's a great snapshot. And the question I want to ask you is, the target audience of Author Level Up is intermediate authors. So these are people who they've published a few books already. They've been around the block a few times. They understand the marketing basics. They understand, the need to as you've mentioned, just keep learning and learn how to do things themselves. What would your number one piece of advice be to those people?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to, and sometimes people think, business is such a dirty word when it comes to book writing, but it's important to take your book writing seriously and consider it a business. Like, for nonfiction, I think that's easier to do, perhaps, than fiction, because fiction is oftentimes very much about the art and the craft of it, whereas nonfiction can sometimes be more just about like the information and the value of that. But I think if you take your approach seriously and be willing to diversify your skills in terms of trying different things. A lot of the stuff we talked about today can be applied to fiction authors too. So you just have to take a slightly different mindset approach to it. But I mean,
Exactly.
being willing to do more than just write a book out and put it on the store and move on. Being willing to write numerous books, try different things and experiment. I think it's super important to experiment. And those are like a mashup of all of these different things. I don't really have a number one tip because I'm trying to do so many things all the time. And I think it is super valuable to be willing to fail, and learn from each experiment, each experience. So, think of your books as a business and try to like put everything together as a package where, you're not just writing a book on puppy farming or a book on computer synergy. I'm just making up random things and mashing them together, but like try to think of things cohesively. So writing a series of books on a related topic, trying to think about how your audiences might converge, and instead of splintering into all the different branches, like how can you write on a topic or topics that will appeal to a similar group of people, so you can continue to build on your momentum with each project, instead of having to start fresh and find a new audience. So that's important. And like I mentioned before, experimenting and being willing to kind of fail forward is really key. Sometimes your book's not going to sell, and there's nothing you can do about it other than just write the next book and try something else. But I think if you take the time to really pay attention to what you do and track what your actions are and put some thought into kind of like, all right, here's the steps I'm taking, and then analyzing what the result is, and then seeing what you can get from that and apply it. So if you fail miserably and something doesn't work out, see what you can learn from that, and don't do the exact same thing next time. Try something different. And it is, when you're doing shorter projects, when you're taking sort of like the minimum viable product model of like creating a short course or creating a basic short book and then finding ways to add value to that, there's less, doesn't have to be scary. Like you can have more freedom to kind of pivot and try things without having to dive into it 400% and risk, failing utterly. So if you're writing like a 100,000 word book, if that doesn't sell, you spend a lot of time putting that together. Whereas, if you write a short book that took you a couple months to write and edit and put out, you really have that benefit of like, if it doesn't click, you can fine tune it, you can adjust it, you can do another cover, you can try things, because if you're self-publishing, you have that flexibility to kind of apply different things and learn from them. And I spend a lot of time experimenting, and not all of my experiments work, but sometimes the things I think are going to work the least will often work the best, and you never know until you try. So wrapping all this sort of into one sort of, it's not really a one. I apologize. That's not like a one tip. That's sort of just like do all these
I know
things.
it's a tough question. It's okay.
But I think it's just important to, be willing to try things and be flexible and take yourself seriously, and, have some faith in yourself too. Like maybe, you're on a path of growing and you're trying to, level up and do things. And, it takes time to do that. So the longer you put into it, and you sometimes just through perseverance, like trying to push forward even if you're struggling. Like I think there's points where I almost gave up writing books because I didn't feel like I was getting the traction I needed to. And then I was like, well, let me just write short Kindle books and see what happens. And it worked out where I was like, oh, okay. Like I found the niche. I found like my angle that works. And it was a book I was really passionate about, and it just clicked. So you never know what project is going to be the one that really expands your horizons, takes off, or introduces you to new people and builds connections. Like yeah, I'll wrap it up because I can ramble for hours on like do all these things and here's all this philosophical mumbo jumbo.
It's good stuff. Keep it coming.
Yeah, just stick with it and just try things and push hard. And if it doesn't work, try something else. And if I had given up when I had contemplated doing it several times, like I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And I'm always setting higher goals and trying to push further with every project I do. So it's just fun to learn and do things and make it happen, or not. But anyway, yeah.
No, I love that. That's great. And that's that's kind of my story too, because I've done, you know, it's kind of like an iceberg, right? The tip of the iceberg is what you see,
Right.
but what you don't see is like the thousands of hours that you spend doing other things. You know, I have tons of field experiments, and I won't talk about any of mine tonight, but I've got some pretty horrendous ones. But you know, that's you learn more from those experiments, in my opinion, than you do from your successes.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can dissect a success, and you can say, okay, this worked for this reason, or this worked for that reason, or, you know, I really had my target audience, you know, for this book, so on and so forth. But I think for me, I've had those low points in my career as well, where I've just said, you know, why am I doing this? You know, this just sucks. And, you know, and I think my greatest strength, and I think my greatest moments when I look back, are what I did in light of those challenges, right? It's what you do, what defines you happens in your darkest moments. And so I just encourage people that are watching this, that are maybe having those moments, or the next time you do have that moment, to really think about what Nathan said, and just remember that tomorrow it could all change. Just
Absolutely.
keep doing what you're doing.
That's a really important point, because, you know, I've done different kinds of projects, and there are moments where you just like, things aren't working. Like, it's very easy to get crippled by stress, or lack of success, or lack of momentum, or having things, you know, not spin out the way you expect them to. And that happens all the time. So even people who find success, everyone struggles through those moments. So like, you can look at me and like, oh, I've got a couple books that sold pretty well. Like, you know, Michael's got books that are selling. Like, some of us are doing really good, but, you know, we're still growing. We still have challenges, and we still fumble. And it's like, we're all human beings. So you just keep that in perspective. You know, even look at the awesome people that are like making, you know, tons and tons of money from their books, and like have tons and tons of books out. Like, they all have had similar struggles too. So
yeah,
you just got to like take that all into perspective and soak it up and apply it to your own world. And
just got to keep on keeping on.
keep on.
Exactly. Well, Nathan, it's been great chatting with you tonight. And for people listening, where's the best place to find out about you and your books and courses?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me first. It's been I love doing this stuff. So anytime. But yeah, if you want to find me online, there's a couple places. If you go to my main website, which is www.nathanmeunier.com, and that's my last name is Meunier. That's kind of my home base on the web. I have links to a lot of my different things. You can get a free book. My second book in the Indie Author Success Series is out. You can get it for free if you sign my mailing list, and I also give out other freebies and goodies through that. I've got my other book links there, and game development projects. So that's kind of a home base for me. I also put blog posts and sort of write about my experiments and results and stuff. If you want the link that goes directly to my Indie Author Success Series, it's www.indieauthorsuccess.com. And that's kind of that's sort of a subdivided group of my author specific books, which I'm adding to this year more of. And I'm also on Twitter at NMEUNIER. So my first initial and my last name. And happy to connect with people. I'd love to chat on, you know, Twitter and whatnot. So follow me, I'll follow you back, and we can chit chat if you want to talk about author stuff.
Awesome. And for if you didn't catch all of those, I'll be sure to put all those links you mentioned in the video description, as well as a YouTube card that links to your YouTube channel, because you do some awesome how-to videos as well. So I want to thank you again for joining me tonight, Nathan.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, thank you for watching, and we'll have another interview here soon. And if this is your first time watching the channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. And if this video helped you in some way, please click the like button. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. Yeah, definitely hit the like button. So thanks for watching, everyone.